Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to install a rear tow hook on your 2019 to 2024 6th gen Camaro. Now I call out 19 to 24 because the rear bumper is different from 16 to 18. So for that, there's another video that I can point you to. Come on with me to the bench. I'll show you the tools that we need to get this rear tow hook installed for your 6th gen. Today we're going to do the tools needed a little bit differently. Normally I bring them into this frame, but there's so many tools that you're going to need. I'm just going to lay them all out here and we'll kind of call out what you need in no particular order. So you'll want a 9/16 socket and wrench. This is going to be for the tow hitch receiver that's going to go onto the car. You're going to want a 3/16 and 3/8 drill bit. These are, you're gonna want something that can do hardened metals. So these are cobalt coated or whatever they're called, but 3/16 for a pilot and then 3/8 to drill the hole for the bolts that go through into the car from the tow hitch receiver. You'll want a 3/8 socket wrench and a 10mm socket. This is to get the battery negative terminal loose, and I'll cover why we need to loosen the battery on that later, but essentially it's a proximity sensor we're dealing with. Phillips head screwdriver, small screw, and some star washers for spacing. This is going to be used to move the impact sensor on the rear bumper. This is a 30mm or 1 3/16 grommet. I'm going to have links to everything that I used in the description, but this is optional. This is just if you want to cover the hole or clean up the look of the hole once you drill it. Speaking of, 30mm or 1 3/16 hole saw. This is what I'll be using to drill the hole for the bumper. ChalkShot. This isn't very common. Again, I'll have all the links in the description, but essentially this is so that you can mark the location on the bumper where you need to drill once you have the tow hitch receiver installed. Small flathead screwdriver. This will allow you to pop some of the retaining clips off. A 3/32 Allen key. This will allow you to lock in the collar for the tow hook itself. Then for the fender liner, you're going to need a T15 Torx bit and a 7mm socket. I'm going to be using a drill. You can use a screw gun or you can just use socket wrenches to do that with. I grabbed another 10mm socket for the screw gun, but that's just to get my license plate off. You'll want something to cut metal with. There is a rivet on the back of the bumper that needs to be cut. Also comes in handy for cutting this small screw down so that it doesn't poke through to the other side of the bumper. Sharpie to mark the initial holes that we're gonna drill for the tow hitch receiver. A couple of different size panel poppers to get some of the retaining clips off. I just grabbed a set of lineman pliers. This will help remove the rivet that I mentioned with the cutter. Masking tape to make sure that you're not making a complete disastrous mess of the holes that you're drilling. And then 3M two-way adhesive tape and some scissors just to cut it clean for the impact sensor that has to be relocated if you're going to mount the tow hook in the center. And then of course, tow hook. I know it's not in this box, but get yourself one from ZL1 Addons. They make a rear tow hook kit for the 6th gen Camaro. That is on zl1addons.com. So that's it for the tools. Now that you've seen the tools that we need to use to get the rear tow hook installed, I'm going to go ahead and start by removing the rear wheels and tires. This will give us access to the rear fender liners, which we'll need to remove to get access to the screws to remove the rear bumper. Now, there are some sensors, some proximity sensors in here. So we are going to disconnect the negative battery terminal before we dig into removing any of those connectors from the rear bumper panel, but I'll show you how to get to that as well. Also, one thing to note on the 16 to 18, it's best to remove the rear tail lamps. On the 19 to 24, you don't have to do that. If you are interested in doing a rear tow hook on your 16 to 18 Camaro, Scott Weatherford and the Racing for ALS channel have a great how-to video on that, and I will have that pop up here. I'll also link it in the description. Let's get started. We'll pull those wheels off, and then we'll get the rear liner out, and then I'll show you how to disconnect the negative battery terminal if you don't know how to do that yet. Okay, now that we've got the wheel and tire off, we are taking a peek here at the rear fender liner. Just wanted to, so this is the front of the vehicle this way, and this is the rear of the vehicle that way. So sorry for all of the change in exposure here, but I just wanted to really give you an idea of what these look like. So there are two retaining clips that go in here that you'll pop them out, and then you can use a panel removal tool to get them all the way out. Use like a little flat blade screwdriver. It's essentially like a two-stage removal for that. There are two large plastic nuts that can just be loosened by hand, as you can see here. There's one there, then one right here. And then there are 9 T15 screws need to come out that are kind of riddled throughout the rear liner. You'll see some around the brake line and the rear shock. They're up near the top here as well. And then there are 7mm bolts or screws that you need to get to that are underneath, which will be real tough for me to get this in here to show you, but there are, there's one more T15 down underneath, and then there are several 7mm bolts or screws that need to come out. We'll start with the two simple plastic nuts, one here at the top, one back here of the suspension. Next, we'll tackle these two retaining clips. Now we'll move on to the T15 screws. The last remaining T15 from under here, and then get the 4 7mm screws. There's 3 right here in line with the bumper or the lower arrow piece. Sorry, there's 4 there. And then there is a 5th one up here by the exhaust, and it's just on a little flimsy piece of metal. Now that we have all of the screws, retaining clips, and nuts loose, it's just a matter of pulling this. Kind of pull it behind some of the suspension components and pull it down from around the top. Kind of follow the liner itself. It does tuck into some of the body work. And then once you've got that free, you kind of pull it, collapse it inwards on itself, and then pull it down and out. For those wondering where the wire harness is that needs to be rerouted if you're going to run like a drag pack or some really wide rear wheels and tires, it's this harness here. It's kind of, you know, popped into the body panels with some clips. You would just pull that out, reroute it closer to the inside of the vehicle. I'm not going to do that. I don't plan on running anything crazy wide or a drag pack ever on this car, so I'm going to leave it as it is. And the next step to getting the rear bumper off is once we have the fender liner removed, there is a short 7mm bolt right there that holds the top of the rear bumper to the body panel. So I'm going to go ahead and get that out. Try to do this with one hand. Keep this in the shot. Wish my luck here. Get the exposure right. There you go. And this 7mm screw here does not have a larger washer like the fender liner 7mm do. So that's how you can keep those separated. Next, there are two 7mm bolts at the very back of the bumper. You're going to remove those. And your rear bumper is ready to come off. Okay, before we take off the rear bumper, we want to make sure that we go ahead and disconnect the negative battery terminal. And again, the reason we want to do that is because there are some proximity sensors and things like that on the rear bumper that we want to make sure that we remove any power before we disconnect that. So I'm going to get my 10mm socket and wrench and get that loosened up. Again, this nut does not have to come all the way off. It just needs to be loosened so that you can remove the negative battery terminal to kill power to the vehicle. So now that we've done that, I will go ahead and start working on getting the rear bumper off. Okay, one thing to keep in mind with the rear bumper is that it's plastic, and the clips that hold this all together are also plastic. So before you just go yanking real hard, you want to give it some flex to pop some of those panels loose. And you'll hear them pop and it'll make you nervous, but this is the right way to do it. All right, so it's an out and upward pull. And if you don't cut yourself while you're doing it, apparently you're not doing it right. Okay, before we end up taking this the rest of the way off, you want to make sure you have something laid down on the ground so that you're not scratching up your bumper. So I just put a little towel that I have there that I don't even think you can see. So as you get ready to pull this off, there are two harnesses on the driver's side, and I believe the camera harness on the passenger side. So again, you'll want to have this up and out. Same on this side, make sure it's loose. And then you'll want to make sure that you lift up above. There's a lip here in between the two taillights, and then the rear bumper section comes straight off. So it helps to have another hand, but if you don't, you can do this by yourself. You just kind of start pulling by the taillight section, that'll pop off. And then again over here, if you can get this and go straight out with it. And then you can set it down. These are the harnesses on the passenger side. You'll want to disconnect. This is just my microphone for track that I have there. And then on the passenger side, you have the harness. I believe this is for the rear view camera, for the reverse camera, I should say. This one is not an easy one to get. So if you have a small flat blade, that can assist in getting that out. Now this got pulled down when I was pulling this out, but there's a little spot on the body that allows that to be free. And now you are good to clear this stuff out of the way. The next step here is to determine where you're going to put this tow hook. And where the crash bar lines up with the rear license plate is right along that, just above the bottom 2 screws of the license plate area. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to choose to center it, because I use a vanity plate or no plate at the track. So I have a vanity plate, a 1LE plate that I'm going to also drill a hole through. So when I'm at the track, I can use that setup. So I'm going to determine the center point. There's 2 ways we could do this. We could either measure, or there's a seam right here on the trunk that is centered as well. So we're going to go ahead and set the ZL1 Addons tow hook receiver onto this crash bar here. And I'm going to mark the holes once I've confirmed this is exactly where I want it. What I'm going to do is mark those with the Sharpie. And then we're going to grab our drill bit and drill into that so we can insert the lag bolts that will hold that in place. And then I'll show you what we do in order to make sure we know exactly where this is when we're drilling through. Now I'm going to start with a smaller 1/4 inch drill bit to start a pilot hole, and then use a 3/8 drill bit to get the rest of the way through. Now I'm going to finish drilling the rest of the way through with a 3/8 bit. And that just snapped. Okay, now that we got those drilled through, we'll go ahead and mount the tow hitch receiver. All right, I'm gonna set the ZL1 tow hitch receiver on the back there. I'm gonna get these bolts fed through, and these are 9/16 heads and 9/16 nuts. Place the washer on the back, then the nylon lock nut. As I mentioned, these are 9/16. Get these started. Make sure that's on there tight. And then before I put the rear bumper back on to mark a spot for it, I'm just gonna feed this through to make sure that we're still good here, that nothing got bent or anything like that. All right, we're good on the threading. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rear bumper back on so that we can mark the position that we need to drill on the bumper itself. Getting that soft blanket underneath here. Again, so we're not scratching the bumper. Now what I'm gonna do here is kind of show you what we're kind of aiming for. So crash bar sits right in this channel here. And what we're aiming for is essentially going to be right in this area here. Now, there's some harder plastic and there's some wiring and things like that. So we're going to make sure to avoid all that. But this is just for a test fit. And I'll show you how we're going to mark it. This is what's called a ChalkShot. It's used a lot in construction. It allows you to essentially compress this and shoot chalk at whatever you're trying to mark on the other side. So I'm going to use this on the back side of that tow hitch receiver to mark where it's going to meet up on the bumper. Okay, so I used the ChalkShot, and you can see, maybe not, it marked a nice green spot for me to drill through. So we're gonna do that next. Okay, as you can see, we've marked the spot for the rear tow hitch receiver, and we did that with the ChalkShot. Now, right behind this is one of those sensors that we've talked about, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move or remove that sensor just above this. We're going to kind of relocate it using the harness here, just kind of move it out of the way. So in order to do that, there is a rivet right here that needs to be removed. And then there's a clip here that will slide back and allow me to move it to the other side here. Just using some metal cutters to get this rivet off. Got that free. I'm going to relocate it behind this harness right here. I'm going to clear more of this rivet metal away so it doesn't cut any wires. Disconnect that harness to make that easier. Pop that off. Reconnect that harness. Set it aside for the moment. Now, so that we don't lose this chalk marking, I'm going to go ahead and drill a small pilot bit there. All right. Got the pilot started. Now, before I do any more work back here, I'm actually going to remove the license plate. I should have done this earlier. I'm going to set the tow hitch up so that it's behind the license plate. So I'm just going to remove the license plate here because the tow hook is going to be just behind that. I'll set that aside and continue to drill the pilot hole from the other side here on the back side. So now that we've done that, you can see the hole is going to be right here. It's behind the license plate. And what I'm going to do is use a grommet as well for a little bit added protection from getting debris stuff in behind the bumper, but I'm gonna go ahead and drill. It's a very strange size. It's 30 mil or a 1 13/16 or 1 3/16, I believe. So that things don't get super ugly, I'm gonna go ahead and put some masking tape here, keep this area clear. This is just to keep the paint in a little bit better shape here. Gonna go ahead and mark my hole, drill the pilot the rest of the way through, making sure that that harness is hanging free, that sensor. All right, so we got a little bit pilot started there. Now I'm switching to this 30 mil hole saw bit. I'm gonna keep the bumper as still as we can. All right, see that chewed up some of the tape a bit. So there, kept the paint good, but now I need to go in from the back side and keep that nice and straight. Again, I'm just making sure that none of those harnesses are in the way. They are very clear. Okay, got that cleaned up. We can take the masking tape off of there. Got a nice clean cut. Then the finishing touches here are going to be this rubber grommet that will go in. This will allow me to push the tow hook through without leaving an ugly hole there. Okay, now that we have the hole drilled and everything kind of cleaned up, I want to address the proximity sensor, which is this right here. I have it disconnected from the harness, but there are a lot of additional holes back on the bumper here. This is for like Euro plates and different license plates for different countries. But what I've figured out is that there's two here. If you're looking at the back side of the bumper, it's the two on the right next to this cluster here. There is one that's down by this harness that I'm going to use a really short screw and a couple of star washers on. And I'm going to go very carefully into this location here. Now, keep in mind, if you pop out the other side, it's still behind the license plate, but hopefully you don't do that. And then I'm also going to use 2A tape, 2A adhesive on the back side of this to keep it in line and in check with this other post and this lip here. So it's going to sit like that essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 2A tape here. I'm going to lay it across all of those posts. Cut that away. That way when I peel this away or when I reinstall the proximity sensor, it's not going to be moving around and it's clear of anything else that goes behind the bumper here. So I'm going to reconnect this, pop that in, and then start screwing that in. I'm going to feel on the other side, make sure I'm not coming through. I'm not. And that is going to sit just like that. So we're not having to worry about that flopping around or moving around or anything like that. We're going to go ahead and get this reconnected to the rear of the car and make sure our hole lines up perfectly. And if it doesn't, we'll, smooth out some of the spots that we need to smooth out. All right, here we go. We're going to try to get this lined up. See what our final result here looks like, or our first attempt, or however you want to label that. All right, looks like we just need a tiny bit of clearing on the plastic part back there, but otherwise looks pretty good. Now, obviously the Bumper isn't all the way settled, so that might, I just need to clear a little bit more of that. You can see, then we'll be good to go. Okay, I went ahead and opened this up a bit more on the back side there, so we've got a clear shot. I know it doesn't look like that from the angle on the screen, but I'm gonna grab the tow hook for one last test fit here. Now, I took the rubber grommet that I put in there out just to make this easier to clean up here. Then we can also test it with the rubber grommet. Make sure it's in there. There's no issue. I might need to, there we go. All right, so we'll go there. And then when the plate goes back on, it'll cover that up completely. So just gonna finish putting this back together. Same steps as we did to take it apart. I'll save you some time on that. Just I'll continue to go through the things like reconnecting the harnesses and that, and then zip through some of the assembly. All right, test fitting is done. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the bumper one last time, reconnect all the harnesses, and then start reassembling. All right, so on the driver's side here, we have the black and gray harness. Then on the passenger side, we've got the coax for the rear camera connection. Now that we have those connected, I'm gonna go ahead and get this snapped into its final position. Then let's check final position here, remove the grommet. So that looks pretty dang good. And there we have it, the final result. The rear bumper is back on, the rear fender liners are back in, and this is ready for track use. The rubber grommet is here. That's just a personal preference. It's not required, but this just allows me to go ahead and get this thing in here and ready to go and set for a track day. I'm not gonna put it all the way in, you get the idea. But a lot of questions on why. Like, why are you putting a rear tow hook in, right? This isn't an aesthetic mod. This is very much a use mod. A lot of tracks these days, or a lot of organizations, are mandating or requiring that vehicles have a rear tow hook. And the reason for that is because you could go into a sand trap, you could hit a tire wall nose first, and they have no access to pull your car out. The Camaro doesn't have a factory rear tow hook or rear tow receiver. So this is why I went this route to install one. And I know many of you have as well. Huge, huge shout out to Scott Weatherford and the Racing for ALS channel. He and I have been in communication for years at this point, but I know one of the things that he has done is a install how-to video on 16 to 18 Camaro. And he was gonna do the 19 and up, and decided that he didn't want to do that, and he got angry with the car. And after doing this, I completely understand why. But huge shout out to Scott and the Racing for ALS channel. Check them out, give them a like and subscribe. Tons of great work, tons of great videos that they do over there as well. Some of you like to run without a rear plate. on track. Some of you just leave your regular plate. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I run a Vanity plate when I'm on track. It's the 1LE plate. I make these, they're available. You can check out the link in the description for these. But what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm also gonna drill the same size hole here in the Vanity plate so that while I'm on track, I can run the Vanity plate and still run the tow hook so it doesn't look so blank and bare. That's it, tow hook installed. Hope that you found the video helpful. Till next time, till the next project. See you then.